Good. Okay. So let's do the next one. Let me ask. So do you want me to? Why don't I ask you a question?
I have a follow-up for you. I have another
Please.
question for you that I think will be really cool. Okay.
Okay. So let's write it down. Okay.
Yeah, I'll read this. This is a real thing. It's not from your notes. So a woman that I know in her mid-20s had been with quite a few guys, and she was like, "You won't believe what happened." And I said, "What happened?" She goes, "Last night while we were having intimacy, he kissed me. I've never had that before." And I said, "What?" I've never done no kissing while being intimate. And I think that there's this shift to people who learned everything from seeing dirty stuff online. Like all the men are waxed in their downstairs and they have really disconnected intimacy in a level that I'm not aware of. Like I was so surprised when she said that, and she's just someone who's 10 years younger than me. And there's such a huge difference. What do you think is causing this? And how can men and women have intimacy that's, I guess, got its humanity, right? That still has a level of connection? Because now people are having this really disconnected intimacy.
Right. So there are really two major hormones that can govern your romantic life. And I call them these two different paths that you could take. One of the paths is through the hormone called dopamine. You've heard of dopamine. It's the hormone of wanting something. So when you shop and you want something, when you gamble and you want to win, that's dopamine. And dopamine tends to be kind of a little bit deranged in people's behavior, where they get really compulsive about something, where they get compulsive about ordering stuff on their credit card, or about gambling, or any of those things. That's really, they're letting dopamine, that path, take over their life. In the dating sphere, dopamine leads to a romantic life where people tend to want and pursue the physical act, and the romantic, the connection, all that, they don't even notice that, because the dopamine path just takes them completely away from connection and romance, and it just ends up being a physical act. It's not fulfilling. And just like when you order something, because you're compulsively ordering things and shopping online, that you get that package, you only want to open it, you're already ordering the next thing. That's how it is for the woman that's not kissing. She has seen those, adult materials that are just everywhere, ubiquitous. Both women and men watch these. She has become accustomed to having this dopamine-driven life where it's all about wanting, and it's never about having enough. It's never about the love and the satisfaction and being connected to somebody. It's about the act and the next act and the next one after that. So the other path that a man can take and a woman can take is what I call the oxytocin path. So oxytocin is a hormone produced in the brain and in the gonads and some other areas in the body by both men and women. And when you increase oxytocin around somebody, you get a feeling of connection and romantic feelings for them. And you want to kiss each other, and you want to hold each other, and you want to be physically like with that person and against that person, and having them in your arms. And she wants to be in your arms. And one thing leads to another, and it's an incredibly gratifying act now, where you can look into each other's eyes. It's this deep romantic connection. And when you're on that dopamine path, it just tends to get better and better. And what happens is, for men, the men that I work with, I've worked with like 700,000 men that get our newsletter, coached tens of thousands of men. And what I found is that most men live in a state of not having enough, chiefly not having enough of that physical act. They always feel like they're lacking enough. When they're on the dopamine track, you can get abundance, where you are doing it with your partner so often and for such a long time, and it's so satisfying, and each time is better than the last, that the idea of kissing and making out and all those kinds of things is wonderful to both of you. And you get an abundance in your life, which in my experience, by the way, also leads to an abundance of money and other resources. Just, I'm not sure why, but when a man has abundance in the physical area with a woman, he ends up getting abundance in other areas. And I think that that's what's lacking today in this dating world that we're in. I think it's overly mechanical, and we're all on this dopamine path, wanting the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think that that's undermining true romance and true connection.
So what's really interesting to me when I heard that is that I know that all the positions in those videos are for camera angles, not for pleasure, right?
Right.
Those have always been known. Oh, you would never do that in real life because it's awful. But now,
Right.
because people have learned that way, they're literally doing well, how many positions do you do each time you do? And you hear the list, you're like, oh, those are all bad ones, right? Those are like, they're all ones that aren't even in the Kama Sutra because it's like they didn't have cameras when they made the Kama Sutra. It was just all drawings. So it's interesting that people are having more frequent intimacy, but it's obviously worse. Like it doesn't.
I don't think it's more frequent either. I don't think it's more frequent. I think it's less frequent. And you know, that's why you have these incels. You have people, and you talk about, I don't know if you had ever talked about married friends, and they, you know, the cliche, oh, if you want to have the intimacy stop, just get married. They're all living in this state of not having nearly enough, in my opinion.
I wish that were true. Like, I wish that was a true one. I think a lot of it is, from my perspective, is that people don't communicate anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even when you're in a long relationship with someone, men think that men think women want, right, are like really aggressive, really loud, different positions, whatever makes the most noise or the most mess, and is the most disconnect, like whatever's best for the lights on, camera angle, right? It's like now we always have the lights on, where it used to be like in the dark, so there's like a sensuality to it, right? And women, even if the guy's doing it all wrong, they won't tell him because you're like, oh, I don't want to hurt his feelings, so instead of getting what I want. And it's very interesting. One of the things I learned to say is like, listen, if you don't like something I'm doing and you don't tell me, you're not going to have a very good time. And if you like something I'm not doing and don't tell me, you're definitely not going to have a good time. And one of my experiences, my wife, like the things she likes is none of it was in my repertoire. Okay, when we first got together, I hated how she kissed. She hates how I kiss. And we both were like, what's wrong with you? And you have to learn a completely new routine for what someone likes that's always very different. And so what we do is completely different than I had in past relationships. And I would have never found out if I didn't like ask. And, but we're so afraid, like we're so more willing to sleep on the first date and be naked, but we don't want to talk about it. So we have advanced physically, but not emotionally or linguistically. And so we get in these situations where we don't want to talk about it because we're physically intimate, but have almost no emotional or intellectual intimacy. And if we don't realize how connected it is, we start to really lose things. That's why even from the first date, you have to think or just say what you actually want. And it's really hard, right? We're so afraid of rejection that we don't, it's like, I'd rather not say what I want and not get it than say what I want and not get it. Like, then I know the person's not giving it to me on purpose. So what do you recommend for people to maybe just increase their confidence to the point where they'll at least say what they want?
I think that the point of communicating is very, very difficult. And if you start with a very difficult communication, you're probably going to chicken out and you're not going to do it. So what I suggest you do is you communicate in a different way when you're ordering a meal with a woman, for example. When you're just in a more casual situation, you maybe tell her something about what you like or what you don't like in terms of the food or the menu. You kind of get used to telling her things like that. And then when it comes to something that's much more intimate, where it's really difficult, you've gotten a little bit of practice by telling her what you want or what you like. And then when it's something that's very sensitive, you know, you can deal with it because you've practiced a little bit. That's how I respond to that. And I find that men and women tend to deal with issues in the bedroom differently. Men may tell a woman something that she's doing or not doing, but the woman will generally never tell a man. And a lot of times relationships end because they had some issue that was during intimacy, and the woman didn't want to tell the man because she's not going to. She's never going to say anything. And maybe she tells her girlfriends, maybe she tells her therapist, maybe she tells Reddit, but she doesn't tell the guy. And then he loses her. You know, she breaks up with him and she'll never tell him the reason. So this actually leads me to another question that I got from a woman, actually. And she said, I don't know if he's attracted to me anymore. Whenever we're doing the deed, you know, he kind of doesn't finish. He kind of ends up, you know, losing steam and not finishing. And I'm wondering if it's anything that I'm doing. I'm wondering what's wrong. And I know one thing, Jonathan, she's not telling the guy anything about that. They're just completely ignoring this issue. Isn't that weird? But that's how we are.
So I can tell you this. The guy is probably not telling her what's going on either, right? So
Right.
I've certainly had situations like that where my wife's mad at me that I'm not ready to go fast enough, or not so much the losing steam one, but the more of the like, or I'm not always in the mood. And sometimes and she's like, "Oh, you're not attracted to me anymore." And it's like, "Well, no, I just ate Mexican food and I keep running to the bathroom. It's hard for me to have diarrhea and be like that's happened to me." I'm like, "No, I literally have a diarrhea issue, okay? It's not about you." So often our first assumption is like, "Oh, you're not attracted to me anymore." And
Yeah, it's personal. It's always personal. Yeah.
and the likelihood that that's the real cause is so low. The odds that it's about her are like 1 in 10,000. It could be stress from work. It could be that he smokes.
Oh, I
It could
know.
be
I can tell you what the problem is here. I can tell you what the problem is. The problem is that he is using adult materials by himself, what they call edging, and he is doing it for a long time, and he's spending a lot of that, and his brain is wired to that instead of a real woman.
I don't know what that means. I know the word, but I have no idea what edging actually is. Like, I guess
Yeah,
I'm a nerd.
so I'm trying to keep this super family friendly so that we can have this. So what I'm trying to say is he's looking at adult material, providing pleasure for himself, but not finishing with himself.
That's what that
So
means?
he could go for hours at a time.
Oh, he's trying to increase his endurance.
It's
Like
not really. He's not really training. He's doing it for pleasure. And it's really a dopamine driven behavior. It's like he's gotten into that habit, which is very, very common today.
Okay.
And a lot of women have it too. And as a result, when it comes to a real situation with a woman, he is not wired that way. He's spending so much time with the pixels, with the phone or the computer or whatever, and all those situations that are on videos that are provided for that type of thing, that when it comes to a real woman, he's not even that interested, potentially, because he's not geared that way anymore. His brain wiring is literally changed to be more interested in the pixels than in a real woman. Right. That's the problem. And he's not going to tell her that. He's not going to say, "Honey, I'm addicted to that and I've got a problem." He's never going to tell her that. And she's not telling him this concern either, by the way.
Now I understand. So the solution to that, because I've been in a similar situation, not the exact situation. When I was single, when you're single, you'll say, I'll give a woman a score of a scale of 1 to 10. That whenever a guy's scaling women to 1 to 10, I know he's doing what you're talking about, because what I do is 100% has an issue with adult materials, right? Because when you're actually not doing that, I would go, I'm not going to do that for 7 days. And what happens is you switch to a scale of 1 to 3. Scale of 1 is no scenario.
Well, there's still a scale of 1 to 10, but you're saying you're okay from 1 to 3 instead of.
Here's where it goes. No way I'll do it. I'll do it if it's easy. I'll do it if it's hard. That's it. Like, so there's the woman that you definitely wouldn't. The woman is, as long as she doesn't make a lot of challenges, and there's a woman that I'll put an effort into. And I can tell you that your biology changes probably in the first 2 days. It's so quick how you switch to.
Well, I'm going to have to.
Oh, she's not as pretty as the girl I saw in the videos too. You stop all of that stuff. It's the same thing what happens if you're like trapped on a desert island. Everyone becomes more attractive because the data set is smaller.
I agree with you 100%. However, for a man now there's a lot of study on this, and we've been looking at this for like 15 years. If a man is engaged in that behavior for a long period of time, he can stop, and he's not going to come alive to a real woman for quite a while. It could be months, because the brain has to rewire, and they call that flatlining. So maybe that's the normal experience of somebody that stops doing that with themselves and stops looking at that material. If they haven't been hooked on and everything is fine, and they get really interested in other women. But for men that have been really doing that for a while, which includes most young men these days.
How long is a while?
Several years.
Huh.
Yeah, it takes about 6 months for the brain to really wire this way. And then the brain is wired to pixels, not people. So he could stop, but he's got to really recover. And there's some websites and places for people who are doing this, but basically he has to stop that behavior, replace it, go out on dating, spend time with women, take dance lessons and other things, but he can expect for there to be some issues in that department for several months, maybe even 4 months, 5 months. So he should talk to the woman and just explain it to her. And then a lot of women are fine with that if they understand it's not them. It's a physiological issue that he's getting through.
Yeah, but so there's two kind of parts to the component, and you can answer me this because you know more about the science. For me, it's the direction shifts, so your attraction shifts. So what you see as attractive, you go, oh, I only want girls that are as beautiful as the videos. But you switch to those women are enhanced both literally and digitally. So like for the cover of a magazine, like a fashion magazine, it's 7 to 12 hours of Photoshop of someone who's already pretty, right? They extend the neck to a length that like can actually kill a real human. All sorts of stuff they do, because I have a friend who used to do that, and I was like, how many hours of someone who's already beautiful, so they don't look real at all? Same thing for video. That's why everyone in movies now has blue eyes. They add them digitally. So there's all these things that aren't real. So what I found is that my urge redirected, and because anytime a guy is like, oh, none of these girls are pretty enough for me, it's like, okay, who is pretty enough for you? Someone who's imaginary, right? You have an imaginary life.
Yes.
So maybe the mental part happens a little faster. Like you reset where you can pursue, because when the only way you're allowed to have a finish is with a person, then you're really driven to get to that point where you'll talk to more women, you'll be more confident, of these things. You start to act like a real man. Like I become much more attractive when I do this, because you're no longer on the fence where you're like, oh, I kind of like her, but not that much. You're like I said, you only have the 3 settings. I like her. I don't like her at all. I like her as long as it's not a struggle, and I like her a lot. That's real, and that's much more natural, right? Those are the real 3 categories. It's not, well, she's a 6.5, but I only date 7s. None of that happens. You go, not attractive, cute, hot. It's another way to call it, right? It's like,
yeah, that's right.
And you become, because you want it more, you express more of your personality. Maybe your pheromones change. Certainly your behavior changes, because as men, we do so many things that are unattractive because we're kind of lazy. Men are much lazier about dressing, much lazier about fashion sense, much lazier about how we do our hair, how we smell. But when you activated like this part of your personality, you go, I will do everything that gives me a 0.001% advantage. I'll wear boots that give me a half-inch heel because it makes a slight difference, right? I'll tweeze my eyebrows. I'll do my hair. Shave in a certain way. So we put in all of this effort because now we understand why women do it, because they're doing, because they get what they want. We got to do the same thing. There's a huge difference that comes from like taking care of your grooming, because women look at the effort. It's not even if you're skinny or fat. It's more of like, you can be fat, but you're clean. Fat and clean is better than like skinny and smell bad, like on a big wavelength. So what do you think about that? Like, do you think the confidence comes from smelling good, or smelling good leads to confidence?
I think that men should be enhancing their scent because it makes them more confident. Scent actually causes a change in the brain, a physiological change in the brain. Different scents create confidence in a man, or what you could call being outgoing and being a nice guy, or being assertive and aggressive. Those are all different scents. So, and actually, it works on women as well. Women have almost twice as many brain cells dedicated to scent as men do. So scent is much more important to women than it is to men. But what we have is, our sponsor, Ideal Male Labs, we have a attraction cologne that is loaded with these animalic accords, ambergris, castoreum, civet, and deer musk, that actually women can just can't get enough of on a guy. And at the same time, they actually give a guy a feeling of much more confidence. These scents actually make a guy feel more confident, which gives him more confidence. And women are more attracted to men wearing this type of scent. And actually, the company is offering a special promotion because they've had such great results with this for men that they're actually happy to send you a bottle, a full bottle, not a sample, but a full-sized trial bottle. And all you have to do is help them out with the shipping. And then you can use it, you can spray it, you can enjoy that confidence. And if it's everything you say it is, the company will go ahead and put the balance, the cost of the product on your card that they have on file. And if not, they won't. And then all you do is you let them know, which is very unlikely, and then they'll even pay the postage if you want to send it back, which nobody ever does. So I am a great believer in this. It's called an attraction cologne, because these animalic accords give a man more confidence, and women just can't get enough of the scent on a man. So I suggest that you take advantage of this from our sponsor. Go ahead and click on the link and get your trial bottle right now. And Matt Cook here with Jonathan Green. Look forward to speaking to you on the next video.